just continue. All right, there's no point in closing it, right? So once you start live streaming, we'll just go live. We'll just hold it there, right?
Yeah, I started.
You started.
Right
Okay.
now, yeah.
Right. I think we see it. I think you see it.
Okay, I don't see the video's unavailable yet. So are we broadcasting it?
Yeah. Let me give Kenneth the right link. Let me double check the link.
Is the link wrong?
I just updated it. I don't know why it didn't work the first time. I'll tell him to try it again.
Can you also email me because I posted the same link everywhere.
Okay. So I'll put it down here. It's at the message to your right, Robert. You see that? Message to the right.
All right.
Let me ask Kenneth if it works now.
Okay.
Okay, Spencer is here. Oh. Let's see.
Okay, it's working. Working.
It's working, right? Okay.
Yeah, it's working.
Hey, Kenneth. Hey, Kenneth.
Joe, the link that you gave me, it's a previous video. It's not the live link.
It's not the live link. Could you try again?
Yes.
It ends with a FHK.
Yes.
Is that
you
one?
can click on it and you can see it's not the live link. It's a previous video, an hour, one hour.
No, it's not FHK. The one that's FHK. It's a live one though, right?
No, click on it. You'll see.
Right. Let me double check. That's so weird.
It's not the live.
Oh, right. It's not. How does it come over here? That's strange. Because when I opened this, I am seeing it live on YouTube though. It is live on YouTube.
I just need the link. Give me the link to the live one, to the one that you're watching right now, the live one that you're watching right now.
Right. Okay. Again, it's the same thing though. Maybe I could have Claire give that to you because I don't.
Yeah. Because
Try
yeah.
Try that. I'll ask Claire to give that to you then. Claire, could you give the link? Post it on. Give it to me again.
Okay. Do I send that in the chat or?
It's the same one, right? All right. I'll just send this email to Hold on. Kenneth, does it work now? Kenneth, does it work? Robert, do you see it? See us going live, or is it not there?
It's working on the website, so you guys can just start.
Okay. All right, so we could start then. All right. We're a little behind, but I'm gonna share my screen first, and then we'll give you guys an introduction, and then we'll let the students take over afterwards. Okay? Yeah. Could you guys see my screen? Yes. Okay. So welcome to TOK exhibition, and this is we have 3 classes of the exhibition, so you're free to move around at a later point if you want. Okay, between Zhongda's class, my class, and Michael's class, and let's get into it. Let's. I just have a few slides here to go through as an introduction before the students come out. Okay, and they'll talk about their exhibition. Here's the basic requirements about this exhibition. Basically, it is to explore just one main question. And that main question is, how is TOK manifested in the world around us? We really want to have the students pull from what they know and how they, the world around them, and to see how, if they could identify these TOK elements. Okay. To do that, they need to share 3 images or objects, but with one core theme from one AOK. And so hopefully as they develop this, that would be the thing that holds everything together. And not only the 3 objects with one theme, but also it has to be about one of the 35 given IA prompts. And I believe that prompt is somewhere in the web pages still, so you can browse through there if you're interested to look at all of it in its entirety. Okay. Here's some other requirements the student must hold to. The objects, the images must be of personal interest. Okay. We want to make this as personal to the students as it's possible. As well, the student needs to have a typed commentary of 950 words, and these are the things that they need to have within this 950 words commentary. So oftentimes you see in the websites, it may be a condensed version. So to really get at the real feel of the exhibition, you really need to go through this commentary and read it to get the better feel. Okay, so this exhibition itself, it's a requirement, and it's to showcase this to an audience within the school community. And why is that? So that we could promote a greater understanding of what is TOK and within the school, and also within the school community. And they really wanted to have flexibility in how this could be done. So it could be done virtually, it could be done with an art gallery. There's just so many creative ways, and they encourage us to explore these different ways to do this. Okay, one last slide here. Lastly, we're holding this perhaps a second time, and there's some purposes behind this. Okay, it's for a greater student interactions. We want to have enough time. We want to give students and teachers both enough time to carefully look at what the students have crafted together. And so if they only have a few minutes to look at the pictures to hear all they have to say, it might be a little rushed. So this is to allow for that, to go deeper into really what the students have to say. Okay, so with this brief introduction, I'm going to stop my screen share, and we're going to go to the students. Okay, so with the order we had, we're going to have the students begin to present. I'm going to give the students 10 minutes each. Okay, we may start a little late, but let's just say 3:53 right now. I'll give the students each 10 minutes to begin. Okay, so they could start sharing. And teachers, lastly, if you guys still remember, we have the website. You could also refer to the website for the student materials and the pictures. Even if the students click away, you could still reference that. Okay, all right, go ahead.
Okay, so I'll begin by screen sharing. Could everyone see my screen?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so I'll begin by explaining my IA prompt. So my IA prompt for my TOK exhibition is what challenges are raised by the dissemination and or communication of knowledge. And so for this IA, I've chosen the AOK of the arts. So more specifically, I've chosen painting, fashion, and drama as three forms of this AOK. So I'll begin by talking about my objects now. So my first object is Wang Chengpei's painting from the Qing Dynasty. And so I've chosen this painting out of personal interest because I first encountered this painting when doing docent services at the National Palace Museum in Taipei. And so the context of this painting is that each of the objects that is depicted within this painting has a specific meaning behind it using homophones. So basically, the objects within this painting have a similar pronunciation to another word. So for example, as we can see, there are many bats on the vase within the painting, and bats have a character that have the same pronunciation to the Chinese word prosperity, which is fu. So basically from this, we can see that each of the different objects within this painting has a connection to a specific meaning or knowledge in which the artist is trying to convey to the audience. And so what I realized about this painting is that while explaining it during my docent service, that it was practically impossible for foreigners to understand. And so from such, we can see how this painting demonstrates that challenges can be raised by the dissemination and communication of knowledge due to the means or forms in which it takes. So for example, because the forms taken within this painting requires the audience to be of knowledge groups of certain languages, it may be practically impossible for certain audience to understand the context and the meaning behind this painting. And even those that are able to understand the homophones or the language techniques behind this painting, sometimes without the understanding of culture, it may also be hard to understand why these meanings are implied within the painting. For example, a foreigner may not understand like the value Chinese people place on the idea of prosperity. So this painting has a very specific real world context because it shows how different knowledge groups are able to understand things due to the forms communication of knowledge takes. And so I'll be moving on to my second object next. So my second object is a piece from Alexander McQueen's 1995 to 96 Fall-Winter collection, Highland Rape. So this is actually a fashion collection by the designer Alexander McQueen from 1995 to 96. And this collection was extremely controversial when it was first released because of the design of the pieces and its runway having specific connotations towards the idea of rape, and hence it was accused of being a symbol of misogyny. But however, later on, it was realized that actually what McQueen had tried to express using this collection was the idea of England's rape upon Scotland, or rather their invasions and actions towards Scotland, expressed through the idea of rape. And in fact, he was inspired to create this piece after seeing his sister being abused by his brother-in-law. And so actually this piece was a form of female empowerment as well. So from such, we can see how oftentimes the means and forms in which communication of knowledge takes is often unrelated to the knowledge that it holds itself. And so we can see that this creates challenges within the dissemination and communication of knowledge, because we can often misunderstand knowledge when it is being communicated in a form that is too authentic or too original for us to understand. So this is depicted within this piece in this example, such that actually this piece did not show either misogyny or the idea of rape, but rather it showed the author's own interest in his own identity and also his belief in the empowerment of female. So lastly, I'll be moving on to my third object. So my third object is actually an object of the drama poetry of the Song Dynasty. So this object is simply a digital poster for the drama. And this drama is one that depicts the life of the historical figure Liu. So I've chosen this object because this is a drama that I've watched myself, and also because I've chosen this object because I acquire a lot of knowledge on Chinese history based off the dramas I watch. So why I've chosen this object is because first, beginning with Chinese dramas or historical dramas themselves, we can see that actually due to the nature of this communication of historical knowledge, for the need of being able to entertain, often a lot of things are altered. For example, visual design, such as the costume, may be altered so that it fits more of the modern aesthetic, or that maybe some historical events are altered in order to make the storyline more entertaining. And so we can see that due to the nature of this form of communication of knowledge, we can see that some challenges are already raised due to the fact that it may mislead the audience in the progression of attempting to demonstrate historical knowledge. And so more specifically, why I've chosen this drama itself is because commonly we refer to the Chinese folk story of swapping the crown prince for the cat. And this is actually based off a myth of Liu, which is depicted within this drama. And within this drama, it was shown that this event had actually happened, but actually in real life, there is no evidence to prove that it had actually happened. So from this, we can see how oftentimes historical events are altered in the form of historical dramas in order to also fulfill its purpose of entertainment. And this can lead to challenges in our communication of knowledge, such that oftentimes we are misled. In addition, due to the nature of historical dramas, we also often form emotional connections or personal connections with these characters portrayed within. And so once again, this shows how challenges are raised in this form of communication of knowledge, because when viewing history and historical knowledge, we should remain without emotions and completely unbiased and objective. But while this causes us to stray away from this path and this way of understanding and acquiring historical knowledge. And so once again, I've chosen this image because of, as I've mentioned, I acquire most of my knowledge on Chinese history based off historical dramas. So I've also chosen this because to many of the audience who, like me, may be not as insightful into Chinese history, oftentimes we accept the knowledge that is presented to us as it is, without knowing perhaps the complete truth to this knowledge, such that oftentimes when we view these knowledges, due to the fact that it may be portrayed in some forms of communication, challenges arise that we may be not completely understanding of the knowledge that is being communicated. So overall, in these three objects, I have concluded that oftentimes challenges are raised in the dissemination and communication of knowledge through the form of communication that these knowledges take, because these forms may be misleading or impossible to understand for the audience based on the knowledge groups that the audience is in. For example, if the audience is unable to speak Chinese for the first object, then he or she may not understand the knowledge being conveyed. And the same goes for the first, second, and third object, showing how, based on our own knowledge background, we may be unable to understand every form that knowledges may come in, and hence the challenges that are raised in this dissemination and communication of knowledge. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Spencer. I want to add right here that we won't have any Q&A in the middle, so we'll just continue to the second student's presentation. But if you do have questions, write them down, and then we'll start the questions at 4:22 or 4:23 after the student presentations. Okay, Joseph, you're next.
Hey, hello everyone. I'm going to share my screen. Can everyone see the images, the objects I've chosen?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so I'll start off. So hello everyone. I'll start off with explaining my IA prompt. So the IA prompt I've chosen is the first one. What counts as knowledge? So I've decided to choose this question because on the surface it may seem like very simple, but if we consider more about it, it is actually a very, I consider it a very complex question, as the word knowledge can be defined as can have many definitions. So when asking what counts as knowledge, I think this really touches upon the essence of our TOK exhibition, asking of how TOK can be manifested in the world around us. So the objects I've chosen are some explains this IA prompt in a progressive way, starting from the first object, stating out what type of knowledge I want to define, and with the second and third objects explaining on what knowledge is and what I think what counts as knowledge. Okay, so starting with the first object. So my first object is my phone's weather forecast. So the nature of knowledge, making it so easily obtained, causes us to feel very doubtful about what it is and what it is not. So with this exhibition, I would really like to respond to the prompt by exploring what the basis of knowledge is and ultimately showing on how it reflects the truth. So with this first object, it connects to my personal experience. Since every day before I go to school, I would have to check the weather since I ride the bike to school. So in case it rains, I don't need to. I couldn't ride my bike. So in cases that it would rain, I can't ride my bike to school. So sometimes knowledge can be surprisingly difficult to define due to the nature of knowledge itself. So here in my exhibition, I would want to define knowledge as the most common way of using the word know as the verb to know, stating that someone knows about something. So the example of my weather forecast can be a good example of showing how someone knows about something, or how someone knows about something. So in this case, here the weather forecast shows that there's going to be a 100% chance of thunderstorms on a certain Sunday. So although nowadays technology is very reliable, this weather forecast does not provide the knowledge that there is definitely going to be a thunderstorm on a Sunday or any days after, since it is predicting what the weather is going to be on the next day. So here we can see that knowing and predicting are two very different words expressing different certainties under different contexts. So knowing something and predicting something is very different, since the word predict comes with an ambiguity that something may not be true and can contrast in comparison to knowledge, which is often connected to facts and something that has to be true. So if I base on this weather forecast, I would then believe that it might rain, that on on the coming Sunday, but it would be completely different from myself stating that I know that it's going to rain on Sunday, since I lack in the confidence that it would definitely rain on Sunday. So from these conditions of knowing what counts as knowledge, we can switch from realizing like the conditions of what cannot be considered as knowledge, we can switch it around and then say that there are like certain needs and certain aspects to make something to be counted as knowledge, in which this case, we can say that something needs to have a confident belief in truth to be certified as a piece of knowledge. So my second object is a Japanese light novel, Tsukimonogatari, and it includes a lot of dialogue-heavy content to guide the story and character developments. So I personally enjoy it a lot. And so within this book, there's one of the catchphrase of the main heroine saying, "I don't know everything, I just know what I know." So the protagonist sees this quote as a constant reminder of self-admonition and the implications of going beyond just telling just telling like it is. So it is essentially saying that people can be self-aware of the boundaries of what they know. So we can consider this as a knowledge as well. And he provides himself an example of not knowing how to speak the language of French, stating that is an example of knowing what he doesn't know. So despite this statement being a bit contradictory, we can see that the wisdom of realizing one's own ignorance can also be seen as a piece of knowledge. So this goes to show how common knowledge can be, and how it is so easily identified, so much so that it even lies within our daily lives, and even without our self-awareness. So this links back to my theme of being doubtful about what knowledge is and what it is not. So as a result, So lastly, my third object is the passage the Butterfly Dream by Zhuangzi. So this passage touches upon the topic of skepticism, and so skepticism is a branch of epistemology in which epistemology is the foundation, nature, and origin of determining what knowledge is in a philosophical way. So this passage, I've come across this when I was in elementary school, and it has piqued my interest since I have first heard of it in ancient Chinese literature class. So this idea of doubting what seems to be true leads to the question if knowledge is even possible. So we can see that the butterfly dream, it is one of the a dream argument, which is quite famous, and it has come across various cultures, such as Descartes, or even recent concepts, such as the brain in a vat. So it is in this case, the butterfly dream is Zhuangzi having a dream of being a butterfly, but then he woke up. So then he questions that whether he was the one dreaming to be a butterfly, or the butterfly dreaming to be Zhuangzi himself, dreaming to be a butterfly. So this infinite loop of just questioning what is true and how we can know, even if what we dream seems to be logical and factual, it goes to show how these skeptical scenarios developed by us human truly question our path in the pursuit of knowledge. So in the end, if all our lives are just a fake, as what the dream argument states, then could anything even be counted as knowledge? It is what I set as a result to my TOKI prompt. So as a conclusion, I would say that it all depends on one's perspective on how to define knowledge. So ultimately, if one would define knowledge as something as the fact or the truth, they can use such as my first object or my second object to state that what can be counted as knowledge. But yet again, in my third object, I provide a different perspective of how humans can understand knowledge. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Joseph. And again, I want to remind the teachers, if you have a question, please write those questions on the message column, and then we'll have those questions looked at, okay, after all the student presentations are finished. Our last student to present today here is Livia. Okay, so Livia, you're up next. Yeah.
Joseph, can you turn off your screen sharing? Second.
It's the present button next to the middle one. Yeah.
Can you see now, or?
Not yet.
I'll try again.
I don't see anything yet.
Just a minute. Okay.
Or if you can't have it, I'll pull it up for you, Livia, if you want me to do that.
I'll just try again, and then if not, then...
Oh, okay. If you try it again first, though.
Okay. Okay, is it working?
Yes, there it is.
Could be. There we are.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so my IA prompt is, does our knowledge depend on interactions with other knowers? And the AOK that I'll be exploring is history, because I wanted to mention that all of these three images have traveled throughout history, and the interactions that they portray have traveled within history through different time periods. As we see, Plato's allegory of the cave was made in about 375 in that year. And then the North Korean propaganda was made in 2017. And then Witold Pilecki's Rapport W was made in 1943. So I just wanted to show that these interactions have traveled throughout time and history and what effects they have. So for the first image, this is a picture of Plato's allegory of the cave. And Plato was an Athenian philosopher during the classical period of ancient Greece. And he established the allegory of the cave as a way to discuss the deceptive appearance of things we see in the real world. And so through it, he encourages people to instead focus on the abstract realm of ideas. And the cave represents a superficial physical reality, while the shadows cast on the walls represent the superficial truth which the prisoners are exposed to. And what I wanted to say is that Plato's establishment has, again, traveled throughout time, as there has been many modern modifications to his idea, mostly where the shadows casted on the walls represent the media icons we get our information from today. And so this image connects to the idea of our knowledge depending on interaction with other knowers, since it contrasts between an individual who strives to seek knowledge, such as the one who escapes the cave, versus individuals who only depend on interactions that they have with the other knowers in the cave, who in fact know as little as each other. And it shows the impacts that one individual could have on the knowledge of others. For example, if the man who escapes the cave can go back in and have an interaction with the prisoners, they could be more open-minded and they could be more aware of their surroundings and what is going on around them. But he can also motivate them to question more what they are exposed to. And this image was also included in this exhibition because it demonstrates the power of striving to know more than others. And the prisoners who escape have the advantage of discovering sort of their own reality compared to the prisoners in the cave. And what made me choose this image is the fact that we spoke about it previously in our TOK class. And straight away when I chose this prompt, straight away I thought of Plato's allegory of the cave, and it has a personal connection to me because it made me think, again, in today's society, who are the prisoners, who are the escapers, and who are the gatekeepers, the people who are casting the shadows. And it seems to me that there's actually much more to this image than it seems, even though it was made a long time ago, as it encourages us to kind of close our eyes to the artificial truths that we see. For example, the truths we see in the social media today, and the different interactions that we are exposed to and we are kind of forced to rely on. And so, yes, this is the interaction that I think is well portrayed in this image. And then moving on to my second image, the North Korean propaganda targeted towards the US, published in the Guardian newspaper. It was published in 2017, like mentioned previously, and 2017 was specifically a period of very heightened tension between North Korea and the United States. And it began when North Korea conducted a series of missile and nuclear tests that demonstrated the country's ability to launch missiles beyond its immediate region. And it suggested that perhaps North Korea's nuclear weapons capability was developing at a much faster rate than had been assessed by the US intelligence community. And then this article published in The Guardian was it kind of attempted to show North Koreans' propaganda in the nation to kind of embolden their country and urge the people to resist US imperialism and kind of be against the USA. And so my perspective on this image, I try to kind of think of myself as a North Korean in terms of how would I see this propaganda, this interaction. And again, I wanted to show that interactions don't always have to be verbal, because this one, for example, is a physical interaction that I would see on the street if I was in North Korea. And so I wanted to kind of step down to the level of a North Korean and kind of think how I would see this propaganda. Would I believe it straight away? How would I interpret this information, etc.? And I was inspired to use this image because I watched this human rights activist, Yeonmi Park, who actually escaped North Korea, and she talks a lot about how North Koreans who have escaped North Korea can actually contact the people who are still there. And this kind of inspired me to think about the propaganda, because there is so many false things portrayed in the propaganda images and the posters. And so it's very different to what people who escaped North Korea would say to the people inside. And this kind of, the two kind of clashing interactions that they have made me think, well, how this knowledge is built in the North Korean people's minds. And since, obviously, as we know, North Korea is called kind of the hermit nation, as they don't interact with other countries around them, really. And people are prohibited from leaving the country. So it also made me question that perhaps there could be knowledge without this interaction, because maybe North Korean people might question why they can't escape the country, or why they can't do this, or perhaps there's a different reality to theirs. They would question if everyone else lives like them, etc. So maybe that could be kind of human nature to question our surroundings. But if we are used to them, and if someone comes along who has seen something else, I want to say that this interaction is very important, as it kind of expands this limit that we reach if we don't have this outside knowledge. And this, again, I have a personal connection to this image because of my generation and how, my generation's kind of interactions with countries, this will be in our hands, how countries interact with each other and what interactions are allowed and what isn't allowed to be said about other countries. So I think this is really important politically, not just in terms of interactions with knowledge. And then lastly, moving on to the third image, I am using an image of the first page of Witold Pilecki's Report W, and it was written in 1943. And so Witold Pilecki voluntarily got himself arrested and captured by the Nazis to the Auschwitz concentration camp in order to find out exactly what is happening at the camps. And so his plan was to get himself arrested into the camp and gather all the information that was hidden from the public, and then eventually smuggle it out if he was able to escape successfully. And then back then, no one outside the camps knew what was happening in Auschwitz, since Nazis persuaded the prisoners that were going there that they were taken to a normal work camp. And people who have escaped didn't make it far enough to actually spread the information worldwide. And so Pilecki formed an underground resistance movement in the camp, and he documented the daily brutalities that the prisoners faced. And so his report was heard of, for example, in England, but not taken seriously, and therefore no actual help came from outside countries. And he managed to escape the camp with two other prisoners as well. And so I wanted to say that this image linked to my prompt in the way that Pilecki's report has been crucial in finding out exactly what is happening at the camps. And since he was the first to actually alert the world about what is going on at the camps, without him and without his interaction with the people who didn't know, people would still be deceived into thinking that they are not going there to get murdered. And so furthermore, as we see, he did this voluntarily, so it could suggest that it takes a very skeptical person to kind of question what's going on around them and kind of sense that there is something happening and there's something more to what people are exposed to. So the skepticism kind of helped this interaction happen, because without him and without his skeptic, we wouldn't know what was happening at the camps. And this object was included in this exhibition because it also demonstrates the power of an individual's knowledge, just like the rest of the images. And what he knew and shared kind of created a chain reaction within the world. So if someone else knew what he knew, that could spread around the world. And he had evidence, as he was obviously there. So his example demonstrates that knowledge can be dependent on interactions with other knowers if the knowledge is unique and it rises above the normal, because obviously, as I said, the people didn't know what was happening at the camps. So the fact that he was able to put all the puzzle pieces together and report on everything that was happening made perfect sense. And so he kind of helped us to think more critically and help the people start fighting back. And then I wanted to say that this image has a personal connection to me, because actually my great-grandfather escaped from Auschwitz concentration camp as well. And also it links to my Polish identity, as I actually never heard of Witold Pilecki outside of Poland, where I studied. He was never mentioned in any textbooks or anything, even though I studied World War II and World War I. And so it made me question that maybe some interactions that are passed on through history are only conserved for a certain culture or ethnicity to remember. But I think, again, it shows that our knowledge can depend on interaction with other knowers. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Lydia. Okay, how are we going to do this? I think we have some questions that was put out by teachers, and so we want to look at that. I think we'd like to do this since there's 3 students. So we may take one question at a time, and we'll just alternate between the 3 students, okay? I want to scroll back to the front here. Okay, so this is our first question to Spencer. Hi, and it's Robert's question. To what extent do you think audience's personal or cultural bias would affect communication of knowledge in art? Okay, so take a look at that question first. Your A-OK, your theme is based on art, right? So to what extent does personal... Right.
Mister, I didn't hear the whole question.
Oh, okay, let me state that again. To what extent do you think audiences' personal or cultural bias would affect communications of knowledge in art?
Well, I think that is true to a moderate to great extent. That um, in our viewing of art and the knowledge in which it portrays, we may be biased based on the culture. So, for example, like when we're viewing the painting of my first object, because we are also of a Chinese culture, when we view the painting, we may have some biases, like the ideas that are being portrayed within the painting may be more important than other ones that are portrayed under other cultures. And apart from that, for example, in my third object, the one of the drama, sometimes when we look at knowledges like such, our identity and our ethnicity is also a source of bias for us. Like, so for example, sometimes when we look at, like, for example, dramas from the older dynasties, we may feel like that our origin of culture, or that the history of Chinese people may be better and more developed than other ones in comparison. So I think there is a bias that
Right.
exists.
Well, as a follow-up, do you think there are some universal concepts, though? Do we see that less often then? But are there universal things, universal concept that holds true throughout different cultures, though?
Yeah, I think there are concepts that hold true throughout culture, because, like, because we are all people and we are all the same. So oftentimes there are a lot of needs or beliefs that we share in common. So, for example, maybe in different cultures, we may have different religions, but the idea of spirituality or religion itself persists within different cultures, even though that religion may be different for each of different cultures.
Okay, second question is for Joseph, and it's a question by Mr. Quick. And it says, Joseph, how do you determine whether a piece of knowledge is of value? How do you know if some knowledge you acquired, you're looking at it, is it of value?
I guess I would say that I would determine a piece of knowledge on how valuable it is based on its function. So, for example, if I say that I have the knowledge to know how to type, it is much more valuable than knowing how to spin a pen. Yeah.
Okay, I'm looking through.
The reason why I asked that, Joseph, was because in your examples, you mentioned, for instance, the Japanese story, the name I cannot pronounce properly. You mentioned that story, and for a person who doesn't have an understanding of the background of the story, it's perhaps difficult for them to gain the knowledge of that story or the point that's being made by a character in the story. So I was kind of curious, how do you then ascribe value to the knowledge that's being given through that object as you shared?
Well, like the object I provided is only to show the quote. And then since I think like the book inside the book, it also mentioned the Socratic paradox. I know that I don't know, which also responds well to my IA prompt.
Sounds like what is that from Ecclesiastes 2? The knowledge of one's own ignorance is the beginning of wisdom.
What? Can you state the?
Right, that's a biblical principle. It's from the Bible. Knowledge. What is it? I can't remember the exact way it said. The knowledge of one's own ignorance is the beginning of wisdom.
Oh, yeah, I think. In my exhibition, I also stated that the wisdom of realizing your own ignorance,
right?
Yeah, can be seen as a piece of knowledge.
Okay, let's move on to Lydia's question. I have a question here. It's from Tina, okay? And it says, could those people in the cave not reach a deeper understanding of knowledge and each other without the distractions of the outside world? So there's another element there, outside world. Could they perhaps just through, wouldn't it be less distractions if they don't come out? Is that the question?
I think to an extent I could agree with this question because there are a lot of distractions outside of the cave and stuff like that. But if they are just exposed to the same message constantly, then wouldn't that just make them believe that this is all there is and this is all that they will be ever exposed to? And I think that's why, like I mentioned, with human nature and human instinct, that we could question our surroundings and stuff like that. I think that maybe even if they are exposed to the same reality over and over again, maybe somewhere they would think that there has to be something outside. They could question maybe who is creating the shadows, who is actually in control of making the fire, how is that, what's behind us, that kind of questioning yourself. And so I think they could reach a deeper understanding of knowledge, but I think it would be more difficult for them if they didn't have any knowledge of what is outside. So, yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's return to Spencer's question here. Spencer, here's a question from Tina. Let's see. We sort of answered the first part of that question. I'm going to go to her second question. Could it be not understood? Could art be not understood with prior cultural or intellectual academic knowledge? So we're going to go deeper, right? So
it's meant to say without. Could art not be understood without prior cultural or intellectual knowledge? So through universal knowledge, not intellectual or academic knowledge, or cultural background, or knowing the cultural background of the art, just as it is.
So whether we are able to know art just as it is, and without cultural background, I think only to a certain extent. So, like, for example, in my object, as I've mentioned, it was shown that the different objects within the artwork had different meanings, different connotations, maybe to the Chinese culture or to the Chinese language, leading to the cultures and further implications. And so from that, we can see how like maybe without understanding on the Chinese language or culture, to the viewer, the vase or the musical instrument within the painting is just an instrument, but actually, in fact, the instrument is a symbol of like rising in Chinese. So sometimes without like very specific knowledge, we may be unable to understand certain pieces of artwork, or actually sometimes, oftentimes, like the importance of artworks themselves come within the context of their creation and the process of their creation. So sometimes when we simply look at art without understanding its context of how it was created, when it was created, or by who it was created, then sometimes we are unable to actually justify the meanings of and implications of the art simply by looking at it itself.
But can that not also dilute the art? Because for me, if I look at those three images, the first one represents nature and music, that's universal. The second one represents women and femininity, and that's universal. And the last one, male and female love. So I can get a lot from those images without knowing the cultural context or without applying any intellectual or academic connotations to those images. And I think even maybe more so than if I start intellectualizing them or start thinking about the cultural connotations.
Well, yes, I think that's also possible.
Okay. Okay, let's move on to the next question. It's for Joseph. Okay, Joseph, Robert was asking, are you arguing in any ways that there's no absolute truth in perhaps what you're saying in your arguments there?
Yeah, I would say that there's no absolute truth. So, for example, I myself am a Christian. So if anyone here is also Christian or has a certain religion, they may know the concept of like how some things that human cannot yet to understand. So then this goes to like show how we cannot know what the reality is. And so here I think knowledge is actually just something that we tend to believe that it is the truth. Like it's something that we decide that to believe that it is the truth. I guess that's how I would say it.
This is a bit of a challenge, though, isn't it? Because we can take measurements of the world around us, and we can measure how much a kilogram the mass of a kilogram, or we can measure the length of a meter, or length of an object, and say it's so many meters. So, is there not some knowledge which is independent of the perspective of the person watching it or looking at it?
Can I interject very quickly? Faith is a way of knowing. Right, under the WOK, faith is a way of knowing.
Yep. Right. So I think Joseph's we would have to there's actually a lot of ways we could explore the themes Joseph mentioned. His is more it's about epistemology. How do you know? How do we know? And his ways to try to explore that was through the examples, right? But you would still have to come back to basic foundations, right? What's the basic foundations for knowledge? And I think Joseph tried to do that, but ultimately, though, you still have to explore knowledge itself in a very deep way, and then it just the deeper you go, it's also the method you explore that with. It's the method you explore that with, and then that becomes the question itself. What's the method you're exploring with? And are these even valid themselves? And if they are, or are they not, right? So maybe that would lead to a closer exploration. I got to move on to one last question, and we're actually out of time, but I want to say one last question for Livia, and let's do that before we end out the session here, okay? Any particular one? How about this one, the one on Auschwitz, okay? Bringing new knowledge to the rest of the world can be accepted or rejected, as in the Auschwitz example. Why do you think this is the case? And what impacts this acceptance or rejection?
I think, generally speaking, I think since Witold Pilecki actually escaped, just by looking at the state of him as he is when he escaped, when he comes back to his family, just the state of him with his shaven head and malnourishment, that would I think answer a lot of questions, and I think it would answer a lot of families' questions as well, because I'm pretty sure a lot of families who knew that they would be going to a work camp, they would question why their relatives have never returned, and it would make perfect sense that they were not able to leave, they were not able to escape, and so I think just by seeing him escape and just by seeing the state of him after him escaping, I think that would answer a lot of questions. And I think that would generally, I think the public would accept this knowledge of what he's sharing. But like I said, it was rejected by outside countries like authorities because there was no evidence except what he had going out about the camps. So it was only him that actually reported it and actually showed it to the authorities. So just having one person's backup who went there, that could be perhaps seen to the authorities as a way of him saying, oh, you know, he hates the Germans or he hates the Nazis. That's why he's trying to say that they have this camp or something like that. That could be why they rejected it, or perhaps, you know, it was something that they had no actual evidence to. And since the camps were kind of hidden from the rest of civilization, kind of, they were on this, you know, they were not in cities where people would see them. So people would really think that, you know, maybe there is something deeper than this, and maybe there is something going on as well. And actually what they did in Auschwitz, I read in one of the books, is that the Nazis actually got people to send the prisoners to send postcards to their relatives, and then so they were sent. But then once the prisoners got the responses back from the families, all of these responses were burned. So it kind of also gave the family a hint as to why did they send me a postcard, but then I never got the reply back. That would kind of make it more suspicious as to, you know, why they never replied, what is happening there, etc. So I think it was kind of, on one hand, obvious that there must be something going on there, but then I think the authorities didn't accept it because they just had evidence from one person. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for all the
Thank you.
that participated and posted questions. Thank you for your time. Thank you also to the students who presented and was willing to share a lot of something very personal to them. And so this was an exploration of that, and also exploration of TOK themes. So we'll end this here, unless anybody else have any, Robert, any other concerns? No? Or, all right, we'll end this here, and thank you again. See you guys all later time.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you in class.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Good job, students.
Have a good afternoon.
You too. Good afternoon.
Okay, see you.
Bye-bye.
Gosh, you guys are all jumping around.
Bye.
端午节快乐.
Yeah, happy
that's
Dragon Boat
right.
Festival.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. You get a day